Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. A court has temporarily halted President Biden's student loan forgiveness program that could affect 40 million Americans saddled with loans.
I'm 71, and most people my age don't have student debt.
Experts suggest you should still apply for forgiveness while the court mulls a decision. Protesters rallied outside Eli Lilly Company in Indianapolis, demanding it make the cost of insulin more affordable.
Not one more person should have to ration their insulin or die from being unable to afford their insulin.
Lilly is one of 3 major companies nationwide that produces the drug. And we sit down with 2 of the 3 candidates looking to succeed Republican Holli Sullivan as Indiana's Secretary of State. We'll have these stories plus the latest news from across the state right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, early voting is underway across Indiana, and turnout in Monroe County is increasing daily. Election Supervisor Karen Wheeler says 330 people voted on the first day of early voting. That was October 12th. That number has gradually increased since. Early voting ends at noon on Monday, November 7th. The time schedule can be found on Monroe County's website. With election season upon us, many are asking what voting rights do those in nursing homes and assisted living facilities have. As Indiana Public Broadcasting's Violet Cumber-Weiland reports, these Hoosiers have the same rights as others.
Kristen Dulaney is the Special Projects Manager with Indiana Disability Rights.
Folks who live in a long-term care facility, whether that's a nursing home, assisted living, medical, even a locked unit, still have the right to vote.
She says there are extra measures such as providing transportation, vote by mail, and assistance for those with print disabilities that expand their opportunities to vote. Dulaney emphasizes those with Alzheimer's and dementia also have the same voting rights.
Voters with Alzheimer's and dementia may bring notes with them into the polls. I know that you do research ahead of time to think about who you want to cast your ballot for. Folks are absolutely able to bring that with them so they can remember how they wanted to cast their ballot. And then they're also able to have assistance in the booth as well.
She says the assistants in these booths may not be an employer or union representative and can only serve to help read and understand the ballot. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Violet Cumber-Weiland.
We'll have more on elections later in the show when we sit down with candidates for Indiana Secretary of State. The Biden administration's proposed student loan relief program is temporarily paused, and that means millions of people's academic debt are in limbo. But applications for relief are still open at studentaid.gov. Holden Absher has this report.
President Joe Biden's proposed student loan relief program would forgive $400 billion for almost 45 million people. And that includes more than 900,000 Hoosiers. For people making less than $125,000 a year, up to $10,000 or $20,000 in federal student loans could be forgiven.
Now, less than a week, just close to 22 million people have already given us information to consider this life-changing relief.
Life-changing for people like Cynthia Schultz, who took an alternate route to college.
I didn't come from a family of college graduates. I am the first person in my family to graduate from college. I'm definitely the first person to get a master's degree.
Schultz returned to college when her children were in high school, and she eventually graduated with $50,000 worth of debt she's still paying.
I've been retired 6 years. I'm 71. And most people my age don't have student debt. I had some health challenges in mid-career that meant we didn't have as much savings as we had planned for.
However, some people say the program just fundamentally isn't fair.
People take matters of financial fairness personally. So it's not, oh, this is unfair to someone. It's unfair to me.
People opposed to the loan forgiveness program argue that the debt's just being redistributed to people who didn't go to college or didn't choose to take out student loans.
Not everything is fair. And there's lots of government actions that, as someone who's a pacifist, might not agree with the military budget. It's not fair to them.
Currently, 6 states are suing because people consolidated federal family education loans to qualify for forgiveness. States hold and service FFELP loans, which means smaller loan volume and thus less revenue. However, the White House had not finalized the details of the program yet. And as of September 29th, the same day the lawsuit was filed, people who didn't already consolidate FFELP loans no longer qualified.
This essentially rendered the claims that the states had been harmed moot.
A federal judge dismissed the case, but the states appealed to the 8th Circuit Court, and the judge last Friday temporarily blocked the plan as it waits to issue a ruling on an injunction.
The stay merely prevents the Department of Education from issuing the forgiveness. If they are ready to go, they could resume as soon as that stay is lifted.
But does the president have the authority to forgive hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt? The Biden administration is using the HEROES Act of 2003 to authorize the program, but Kantrowitz says that the court could potentially invoke the Major Questions Doctrine, which says for agency action that have major consequences, like costing $400 billion, there should be explicit authorization by Congress. Now, Congress has attempted to pass student loan forgiveness legislation multiple times, but failed.
That then doesn't give the administration carte blanche to implement what they couldn't get through Congress through executive action.
However, Kantrowitz says the legality of what the president did is actually a separate issue. For a court to rule on that program, someone must first show harm.
Until plaintiffs are able to demonstrate that they have legal standing, and so far none have, and I don't think any will, the courts can't consider whether what the president did passes legal muster.
Regardless of the outcome of the appeals court, one side is likely to push the issue all the way to the United States Supreme Court. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Holden Apsher.
Kantrowitz says he expects the court to act quickly, but the decision could take several weeks. We're joined now by Callie Lichter for the latest headlines from around the area. Hello, Callie.
Hi, Joe. The Monroe County Community School Corporation has approved a budget for 2023 that is nearly $15 million more than that of the current year. The increase is based on county residents passing a referendum on the ballot this fall that will general $17.5 million for the school system. Planned increases will focus on teacher and staff salaries. The minimum hiring rate for district staff will increase by more than $2, and teachers will receive a $4,500 salary increase. If the referendum fails, MCCSC says it will have to eliminate some staff positions. And the Indiana Department of Education has launched the pilot of a new statewide tutoring grant program called Indiana Learns. The goal is to use some federal funds to help students recover from learning loss that was caused during the COVID-19 pandemic. The program officially launched on October 15th, and families can schedule services starting November 4th.
Everyone is rallying around the fact that we are building community and strengthening the learning outcomes for students. And everybody wants to be a part of a good thing, and this is a good thing.
4th and 5th grade students who last year scored below proficient in both math and reading on the iLearn test and meet other requirements are eligible to enroll in the program. And advocates want insulin manufacturers to do more to lower the price of the life-saving drug. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Violet Comer-Whelan reports diabetes advocacy groups T1 International led a march Monday to Eli Lilly's Indianapolis headquarters.
What do we need? Insulin for all! When do we need it? Now!
Eli Lilly is one of 3 major companies nationwide that produces insulin. T1 International is calling for Lilly to take immediate action to make insulin more affordable. Noah Reef is an advocacy manager with the group. He says the organization continues to protest because the efforts Lilly has made to lower insulin prices for certain patients are not enough.
Not one more person should have to ration their insulin or die from being unable to afford their insulin.
Other advocates called Lilly's attempts to cut insulin prices PR stunts that do not address structural issues.
Big Pharma can offer patient assistance programs, and the federal government can offer copay caps for the minority of people on government health insurance. These are all half measures and public relations gambits. And they do nothing to address the structural problem of the high price of insulin.
In an email, a Lilly spokesperson says the company is committed to affordable insulin and offers multiple solutions for those struggling with payments. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Violet Comber-Weiland.
In an email, a Lilly spokesperson says that the company is committed to affordable insulin and offers multiple solutions for those struggling with payments. And the leaves are changing in southern Indiana, which means peak colors and peak tourism in Brown County. Nashville Town Council President Nancy Crocker says the weekends are particularly crowded and the best time for people to come and avoid crowds is during the week.
It has been insane. The traffic has been backed up for miles trying to get into town. All of our hotels are booked. Restaurants are having at least an hour wait.
Tourism is the main industry in Brown County, bringing in more than $40 million to the local economy each year. And the Indiana Department of Natural Resources has awarded over $350,000 to 80 rural and volunteer fire departments across the state. The funds will go toward training, installation of dry hydrants, and the purchase of equipment. Small volunteer departments are responsible for most fire suppression in rural areas, and they do most of their work independent of the DNR.
I'd say the volunteer fire departments take care of more than 95% of the fires that I hear about. I mean, they call us when they're having a lot of problems, and they have 3 or 4 different volunteer fire departments working on it.
And Joe, there are 831 volunteer fire departments in the state, according to the Indiana Volunteer Firefighters Association.
All right, Kelly, thank you. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. Our Brandon Smith sits down with the Democrat and Libertarian candidates for Secretary of State. And actress Kate Mulgrew stops by Bloomington to see a statue commemorating the birthplace of Star Trek Voyager's Captain Janeway. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
Public television's mission is to create a more informed and engaged public with inspiring programs, compelling stories, and trustworthy news. And we can't do it without a team of professional journalists, media specialists, engineers, and administrators making it happen both on the air and behind the scenes. Want to work for WTIU? Find the latest job postings on our website. Details at WTIU.org/jobs.
Life is full of choices, and right now your favorite member benefit, Passport, is offering more choices for you to stream.
Welcome to the club.
It's a beautiful thing. With cooking.
I gotta let it cook, but I keep wanting to smell it.
Travel.
And here we are. Oh, yeah!
Documentaries.
I realized I could change the world.
And so much more. The choice is yours with Passport on the PBS Video app.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Election security and the validity of election results themselves are at the forefront of Indiana's race for Secretary of State. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith sat down with 2 of the 3 candidates vying for the job, which, among other things, oversees elections in the state. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thanks very much, Joe. Democrat Destiny Wells is a military veteran intelligence officer and an attorney. She's also called herself the only pro-democracy candidate in the Secretary of State race. Here's what she had to say. What does that mean to you to be a pro-democracy candidate?
It means upholding our political norms that we have had for decades that make us a functioning democracy. It means allowing free and fair access to the polls while still having safe and secure elections.
For Hoosier voters, is the legitimacy of the 2020 elections an issue in the 2022 election?
I believe that it is an issue, and I hear it out on the trail. I have questions from voters asking me if they think there is fraud in elections, and I remind them that there have been over 50 court cases that have litigated this issue and found that there was no concerted effort for fraud. And so as Secretary of State, it is our moral obligation to make sure that we are informing and educating Hoosiers and always being fact-based in the information we put out.
Is there more we could be doing to shore up election security?
There are always improvements to be made because security is always evolving. There are always new threats that are emerging. People are smart, they figure out systems, and so it is imperative to always have that as a priority in the office.
Are there changes needed to Indiana's early voting process, and what should those changes be, if so?
Well, we have 28 days of early voting right now. Indiana is a bit friendly when it comes to early voting, and my opponent has said on the record that he wants to limit that to 14 days instead of 28 days, and now he's flip-flop positions. And I would say that is just to placate the moderate voter who he knows he needs come election day. And so I want to maintain our early voting 28 days.
We do not have no excuse absentee voting by mail in Indiana. There are some, again, on both sides of the aisle who would like to see that opened up. Do you think that's a step Indiana should take?
I think that the states that have no excuse absentee voting are doing much better than Indiana in their voter turnout because they have made voting more accessible. Now we have to have that support in the legislature. So I believe in advocating for the newest best practices that are still safe and secure.
Elections are not the only thing the Secretary of State's office does, obviously. When you're out on the trail talking to voters about your race, how much of it is you telling them, hey, by the way, this office also does these other things? Do you think people are aware of how that office works?
I don't think that they're aware how the office works until they actually have to use it. And so I hear from a lot of people who have small businesses, some of their concerns. There are ways that we can help Hoosiers. You know, I've had conversations with the vendors who supply the technology that Hoosiers use, for example, with inbiz.com. That has not had a new rollout in a very long time. And so there are ways for the Secretary of State to implement new technology, to be innovative, and to best serve Hoosiers.
How should Hoosiers, rather, expect you as a Democrat to be able to get things you want for Hoosiers from a Republican General Assembly?
Right. Well, people, they ask me, if you're going to be a Democratic Secretary of State, how will you get business done with Republicans? And I tell them we were never supposed to be a one-party system. We are supposed to be a two-party system to hold each other accountable. And so that relationship is going to be twofold. It's one, it's going to be brokering relationships, bipartisan action. And the other is going to be educating Hoosiers when the system is not best serving them and shining a light on some of these things that a supermajority Republican government has not been necessarily communicating to them before.
I also spoke with libertarian Jeff Moore. He's a tech entrepreneur and currently serves in the Indiana Air National Guard. Now, libertarians are hoping they can have a much bigger impact than usual in this year's race. Here's my interview with Moore. As you talk to Hoosiers, what do you tell them about the results of the 2020 election?
So first, let me be clear. I fully accept the results of the 2020 election. The problem is that we can't audit it. We can't understand what actually happened. So it's not enough to prove or to not be able to prove that there was fraud. We have to prove that there was no fraud. And that has to be done not in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion. That's a much higher burden of proof.
So improving our elections here in Indiana, what does that mean to you?
First is a receipt. That's a piece of documentation that confirms the transaction. We have that every day from every place we go to. Think about this, Brandon. When was the last time you purchased something and that vendor refused to give you a receipt? The other side of it is auditing. And in Indiana, we have a very limited process that is called an audit, but really would be no good if you were running a small business and had a cash register open. So what we need to do is audit all 92 counties. We need an independent audit, and we need that independent audit completed before the elections are certified.
Receipts for every Hoosier who voted, and audits after a full audit after every election would cost a lot more money than we're currently putting into elections. How do we pay for it?
Auditing is not free. You probably pay insurance for your car or your house or whatever assets you own, and that's not free either. But what you're doing is you're paying for protection. You're paying for protection in case something really bad happens. And that's part of what auditing is.
I want to ask about voting generally. Do you think it's easy enough for people to vote in Indiana?
Indiana, compared to other states, is a good place to vote. Are there things that we can do to make it easier? Sure. And to be clear on the record, one, I'm not proposing any changes to early voting days. Two, I'm not proposing any changes to the 11 exemptions for absentee voting. And then what we should focus on is making paper and making the exceptions the exception, not the rule. And if we do that, then the auditing process will be better, it'll be more accurate, and our elections will be more accurate and more immediate.
For no excuse absentee voting. Is that something that as Secretary of State you think would be good for Indiana, that we open up no absentee voting to anyone who wants to vote that way?
So there are a few states now that have had no excuse absentee voting. I don't believe it's correct. I don't believe that my neighbors want that. And so I am not championing no excuse absentee voting.
Why don't you think that's good for Indiana?
I think we need to have trust in the system we have first before adding a new variable.
Election administration is not the only thing, of course, that the Secretary of State's office does. How much of as you talk to Hoosiers is, hey, by the way, this office also does these other things?
There's a lot of that. So one of the first questions I get is, what does this person do? There are 4 divisions to the office. The first, of course, is Elections Division, which was what we've been chatting about. The second is the Business Services Division, which licenses or writes businesses and nonprofits into existence legally. The third is the Auto Dealer Services Division. And the fourth is the Securities Division, which investigates securities fraud, more like Bernie Madoff type of Ponzi schemes, as an example.
I'm curious, as a libertarian, how you view the business services part of the Secretary of State's office. I know that, that this is not a uniform opinion, but a lot of libertarians don't think businesses should be licensed, for instance. How do you, as a libertarian, approach a part of the office that maybe you personally don't agree with?
We need one uniform voice, one registration to say, this is a business, this is not a business. So in that sense, it does serve an important role. But the challenge there is not to over-administer, not to become burdensome and distracting to businesses. And so in that office, my goal is to do the very best to keep government out of the way of businesses, of entrepreneurs, of Hoosiers who are running their businesses.
So, Brandon, there is a third candidate in the race who declined to be interviewed, Republican Diego Morales. What say you about him?
Well, for weeks, Diego Morales has largely refused or doesn't respond to interview requests. He's avoided candidate forums and debates. His campaign, quite frankly, has been dogged by controversies. He baselessly called the 2020 election a scam. He was fired from the Secretary of State's office at least once, and he's come under fire for proposing greater restrictions to early in-person and mail-in voting, which he's backed away from, and allegations of sexual misconduct by 2 women he worked with more than a decade ago, which he denies.
All right, Brendan, thanks so much for your work on these. Appreciate it. Well, growth in the advanced transportation sector may have pulled Indiana out of its slump in clean energy jobs, and that's according to a Green Business Advocacy Group. As Rebecca Thiel tells us, clean energy jobs grew by nearly 7% in the state.
That's a rebound from 2020, where Indiana lost nearly 3% of its clean energy workforce. Natalie King is the founder and CEO of Dunamis Charge, which manufactures electric vehicle chargers in Detroit.
We wanted to tap into a workforce that we knew was skilled and experienced in creating the best in the automotive industry.
Like Michigan, Indiana is one of the top states for auto manufacturing. The report says funding from the Inflation Reduction Act could create thousands more clean energy jobs in Indiana in the coming years.
There has never been more stability and certainty in the market. Clean energy companies know that they can and should set up shop and stay here in the U.S. And the industry is destined to grow.
To take full advantage of that, the report says the state needs to develop workforce training programs and clean energy policies. Indiana's renewable energy goals are voluntary and much lower than several other states. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
And actress Kate Mulgrew beamed into Bloomington last weekend to visit the statue honoring the birthplace of one of her most famous characters, Captain Kathryn Janeway of Star Trek Voyager. Pat Bean has this report.
The statue honoring the first female captain in a Star Trek series was originally dedicated in October of 2020. But because of the pandemic, Kate Mulgrew, the actress who played Captain Kathryn Janeway for 7 seasons on Voyager, was able to appear only by video. But last Sunday, Mulgrew was able to visit the fictitious birthplace of the character who changed her life.
I got the job on a Thursday and went to work Monday morning at 5 o'clock. And nothing has been the same ever since. She transcends everything, and she did in my life and in my career.
I've always preferred farm country myself.
Bloomington, Indiana, your hometown.
Mulgrew said as she drove into Bloomington, she began to wonder where Janeway's house might have been, although the captain won't be born for another 314 years.
Could it be that? Oh, my father would have loved that. And suddenly I was in her head and in her history. And I thought, of course it's Bloomington.
That's the end of this program. Our work continues at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.